Well, hello everybody and welcome to my show. My name is Jason DaCosta and this is Consistent Preterism. Thank you for joining me today on this wacky Tuesday. Or what was the phrase they called it in that cartoon, that inappropriate cartoon? Something Tuesday. Testicular Tuesday? I don't know. Something inappropriate. But anyways, I hope you all are having a great day out there. We're going to take a little break from our 100 reasons why the New Testament is only about Israel series. Not very long. I'm going to come right back to it. But I wanted to do a brief audio on something that's going down in town, so to speak, okay? You guys probably know Derek Lambert from Myth Vision Podcast. Now, I always preface this by saying Derek's a good guy, right? You always got to talk somebody up before you bash him a little bit. But Derek is a good guy. He's an intelligent guy. He's a caring guy. Him and I have had discussions on the phone. In fact, sometimes I have to ignore his calls because the kid just won't shut the hell up. He loves to talk. Sorry, Derek, I'm just playing. But no, he loves to talk. He's got a mind for this type of stuff, Bible, myth, all this stuff. And if you don't know, he's put out a YouTube channel. He's had it there for a while now, called Myth Vision Podcast, and it's got some maybe 7,500 subscribers. So he's done pretty well with it. But the thing about Derek is that when Derek started hearing that I was pushing forth the IO viewpoint and started to hear some of the other IOers and their arguments, he started to get really curious, right? We can call him Curious George. He started to kind of poke his head in a little bit, and that makes kind of sense. That sort of works, right? Because Derek comes from a Bible background, so he knows the passages. He obviously knows what was all coming to an end in the last days. So he gets it, right? He's got a full preterist sort of foundation. So it made a lot of sense to him. But, of course, being that he has this channel and being that he has, potential to grow this channel into something monstrous, by the way it seems, he doesn't want to fully dive right in. And I understand. He if he did dive right in and came out and said he was IO, excuse me, he would undoubtedly lose a lot of followers, a lot of subs. And of course, that means you lose money, you lose monetization, you lose a lot of things that you worked hard for. And so he is bedridden, actually, with cognitive dissonance. It's really, really stricken him. And I think he knows that IO is true in some capacity. I don't think, he thinks that anyone has totally locked it down yet. But I think internally he knows that it's headed in the right direction and there's something there for sure. But he doesn't want to fully commit. And so what he does is he has people on the show, and the show is more based around the myth views, right? And a lot of his guests are very intelligent guys, right? That's what he looks for. He looks for intelligent guys with a mind load of information, a lot of it useless. And they come on and they splatter theories all over the pavement, and you just kind of work through them, kick them around, see what sticks, see what doesn't, throw out the rest, pick up the good, that kind of thing. And so he's had all these different people on there. I mean, some really interesting minds, including myself. And he had me on there explaining the Israel-only viewpoint. But Derek is constantly lately trying to find somebody to answer IO, to take down IO, right? And so he did this with Dr. Bob Price. And if you remember, Dr. Bob Price is... Well, first of all, he's very well esteemed in the myth world. He's sort of like, Santa Claus. Everybody loves him, right? They all believe in him, right? And so he had him on many times, and he pays him, small little amount of money every time he talks to him, I guess. But anyways, he's asked Price a few times about IO, and the last time he asked Price about IO, and he hit him with a couple of the proof texts, Price exploded. Price couldn't handle it. Price didn't want anything to do with it, right? Price was like, I do never want to talk about this view again, right? Now, let me ask you a question. Why would a Bible mind like Price, why would a critical mind like Price, a guy who's invested decades into studying the Bible and studying all these old writers and different theories and, legends and tales and myths and all that, why would a guy like that not want to hear a new and upcoming view? Why would he not want to discuss it? Any guesses? Ah, yes. It's because he has no answers, okay? It's because he realizes that when you look at the totality of evidence for the IO viewpoint, it ruins and destroys everything that he's worked for to this day, right? And no ill will against the guy. I'm sure he's a sweetheart of a man, okay? But when it comes to addressing IO and handling the points of IO, he did a horrible job. And he did so bad that he didn't want to talk about it anymore. You know the video that I'm talking about. It was when he sort of put his foot down and said, I've had it. I think Derek asked him, a very simple question. Maybe it was Romans 9. Like, hey, why does Paul ask about the mercy that's coming on to these Gentiles and quote a passage saying, Isaiah also cries out concerning Israel. Though the number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, the remnant will be saved. He says, so why does he do that? It was something like that. And clearly a question that deserves thoughtful response. But Price wanted nothing of it. In fact, he kicked his feet down, threw up his hands, and said, I don't want to ever talk about this again. Okay, fair enough. So you just showed your cards. Moving right along. Derek has still been in a constant search to get rid of this cognitive dissonance that's been haunting him for so long lately. And so what he did is he reached out to Richard Carrier. Now, Richard Carrier, I'm sure you may or may not know about who he is or what he does. He's an atheist. He's an author. He's a skeptic when it comes to the Bible. Excuse me. He does not believe in Jesus. He looks physically, he looks like a combination of Woody from Toy Story and a young, beardless Bob Ross if he was on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. And what's up with his hair? I mean, is that a perm or is it just a curly wig? I'm yet to figure that one out. But anyways, we'll get back into the jabs a little bit more in the future on this guy, right? Because he deserves it, right? But Richard Carrier was approached by Derek because, of course, Derek thinks, oh my God, this guy, look at him. He writes books. He's well known. He's the man, right? Same kind of thing with Bob Price. Bob Price was the man to Derek, but when Derek asked him about IO, Bob Price tucked his tail and didn't want anything to do with it. Well, Richard Carrier's not quite there just yet, but he's on his way. So what Derek did, pardon me, is Derek, excuse me, need a sip of water here, bear with me. So what Derek did with Carrier is he pleaded with his audience to donate to a fund so that he could pay off Richard Carrier, because the guy's work is, I guess so expensive and so valuable that you actually have to pay this guy to take a look at things. So I think he rallied up maybe $500, $600, $700 and threw it Carrier's way so that Carrier could take time out of his busy schedule and invest 3 months into writing an article about why IO is false. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I couldn't wipe my own tush with $700, all right? That would go nowhere. So what is this guy doing, investing 3 months into writing an article on IO? Or maybe it was 2 months, I don't know, for a measly $700. I mean, the book business must not be doing that well for poor old Dr. Carrier. But anyways, back to the point at hand. So Derek commissions this cat to go out and write an article and to critique the IO viewpoint. And Derek, all the while, was telling IOers, oh, Carrier might even agree with you guys, right? Of course, he knew he wouldn't, but he's, playing it on because Derek loves the drama. Like, he wants to see these things play out. He knows IO is a formidable force, and he thinks that Carrier has the goods to perhaps destroy it. So obviously, Derek's playing this up a little bit. Hold on, let me open up my coffee here. I got my straw. I got my large ice from Dunkin', because America runs on Dunkin'. Okay, that's good. And so Derek obviously has been playing this up a little bit because he, of course, thinks that Carrier has the goods to be able to sort of, I guess, maybe defeat IO or show that IO isn't correct. And, listen, IO's been around now in mainstream, if you will, however mainstream it can be, for a few years since I brought it out. It's been about 3 years. And it's not going anywhere. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's had attempts from Christians down to myth guys, down to atheists like this bozo, and it's never going to go anywhere because it's way too crystal clear. It honors the text far too much. It pulls you back into the context. It drags you, kicking and screaming like the cockroach that you are. It drags you. You get on your hands and knees and you try to crawl away from the context. And you try to pull the attention onto some other wackadoodle theory, like a myth theory or something. And IO grabs you by your little cankles and it drags you back in as you kick and claw and scream and cry. That's what IO does. It drags you back into the context and says, you're not going anywhere, big dog. You're going to handle the problems, all right? And so this guy isn't any different, all right? And the reason why I produced this audio this morning on my way to work is because last night, Carrier finally released his blog article on IO. And he called us, I think the word that he used for us was cranks, maybe? Cranks? I don't know. I got to go back and read it. But he's got these little nerdy words that he uses to describe IOers as if we're like, it's kind of interesting because it seemed, I didn't read the whole thing. It's long. It's very long. I'm going to read it, and I'm going to respond to it. I'm going to start putting my response together. And I can't promise when it's going to come out because, as you know, I'm very close to moving. In fact, this weekend we're starting the move. It's a big move into a big new house. And so there's going to be a lot going on for me over the next 30, 60, maybe even 90 days. But I am going to begin to maybe look at a paragraph or two of his per day and put down some things on paper so that I can come back and I can do, when time permits, a nice, long, exhaustive response to this hogwash that Carrier put forth. All right. And it says that we can comment on the article, but I looked and I didn't see a way. I think you have to actually subscribe or something. But yeah, maybe what I'll do is as I'm going through, I'll hit him with some of these arguments just to razz him up a little bit. Get that little curly perm of his all frazzled. All right. But this guy's kind of like a weird blend of atheism. This article, I should say, is a weird blend of Carrier proclaiming that he's some, God-hating atheist, and also him trying to defend fundamental Christians. It's sort of interesting in that regard, from what I've read so far, of course. I've probably only gotten through the first 25% of it. But there's a lot of mistakes already, right? I mean, just off the top of my head, Carrier, one of his main arguments, and a lot of these guys' main arguments, is that Paul was a lunatic. Paul can't be trusted. Paul had his own things going on. Paul's gospel wasn't the same gospel that Jesus preached. Paul was on a totally different wavelength, right? But what IO does is it comes in the room, it takes off its belt, it pulls off its pants, it swings its you-know-what, and it says, hey, listen, you ain't got nothing. Because Paul actually predicted and talked about the exact same thing that Jesus predicted and talked about earlier, according to the narrative, of course. Paul speaks of the end of the age, not the end of the world. Paul speaks of the gathering of Israel, not the gathering of pagans who never knew Israel, who never knew Yahweh. Paul speaks of all the same things that Jesus spoke of. And one thing that I'm really going to draw out when I start ripping this thing to shreds is the fact that Carrier and others, including Derek, seem to have an awfully hard time understanding, A, that this is a supernatural tale that contains a supernatural being called the Helper. And that supernatural being called the Helper was helping these individuals conduct a mission. And if you recall, in the beginning of the mission, when Jesus is outlining this, what does he say about the characters who would be saved, or the individuals who are going to be sought out? What does he say? Well, he calls them his sheep, doesn't he? He says he wouldn't lose even one. doesn't he? He even says that he knows exactly where they are. He knows what they've been doing. They're in the palm of his hand. And he wouldn't be satisfied until he collected them all or gathered them all. Right? So there's an element of supernatural election that takes place in this story that Carrier and the other bozos seem to forget or completely miss. There's an element of this was all already laid out. They already knew where they were. They had to just go out and seek them with the supernatural help of this helper called the Holy Spirit, which, by the way, Acts 2 and Revelation 7 say was only for the 12 tribes of Israel, by the way. But yet, Carrier and others seem to miss this. Why is that? Well, because it plays in with I.O., right? Think about this. If there's a supernatural helper that's attached to this narrative, that's guiding the path of the apostles and disciples and leading them to places where they would find the lost sheep, right? My sheep hear my voice. They know me. They'll come. I know them, blah, blah, blah. Every last one of them will be raised on the last day, blah, blah, blah. Hold on, let me take a sip. But yet, Carrier doesn't even mention this. Not at all. In fact, all he says is that Jesus had one mission and Paul was a wackadoodle nut job who had another. But what I will show is that Jesus, during his earthly so-called ministry, actually suggests many times that salvation wasn't only to the Jews, but it was also going out far and wide for the purpose of gathering in individuals who were living abroad. What does Jesus say to the Jews in Judea as he's speaking to them? He says, I too have sheep of this, not of this fold. They too will come. What does Caiaphas say in his prophecy about Israel? He says that Christ died not only for the nation, but also for the sons of God scattered abroad. Well, notice how they're already sons of God scattered abroad. They're not going to become sons of God scattered abroad. He doesn't say that. He says they're already sons of God scattered abroad. And isn't it interesting that as the Holy Spirit leads Paul up to these individuals in Acts 17 in Athens, that Paul decides that he should tell them, since we are the offspring of God, as they're worshiping idols, since we are the offspring of God, we ought not be doing this. Well, isn't that matching what Caiaphas said? That he would die not only for the nation, but also for all the sons of God scattered abroad? Well, that's kind of interesting. But we'll get back to that more in depth a little bit later on. But what I want people to understand is that the concept of Israel being out in the nations and being brought back is all over the Gospels. Of course, we know it's all over the epistles of Paul, but Carrier would say that Paul was, high on mushrooms with that little floppy perm head of his. All right. He would say that he was high on mushrooms. He would say that he didn't have the same intentions in mind as Jesus did, which I laugh at because I'm going to rip that sentiment to shreds. Okay. Does anyone recall the parable of the prodigal son? Yes? Okay, good. Well, think about the parable of the prodigal son for a minute. Carrier would have to believe or teach that parable that Jesus gave was Jesus speaking of pagans as the lost son. Right? Think about it. Jesus gives this parable of the prodigal son going away to the nations, right? Rolling around with the nations. But then coming back to Papa God in the end, right? And being reunited with his brother who stayed home. That was the sheep not of this fold, by the way. But yeah, think about that. So we're going to get into a lot of it. But I just wanted to put forth this little sort of introduction to the whole thing, because it's going to happen. You guys know that I travel for a living, okay? And obviously the Rona shut everything down this year, so I haven't been able to do that. So these long, exhaustive studies that I've done in the past on these evangelical Christians who try to, argue against IO, and I come out with a 2 to 3 hour banger that just shuts them right down, and then they go to sleep forever. Those haven't been happening quite as much because I don't have the time. Back when I traveled before the Rona, I would have hours in my hotel room because I don't party much anymore. I'm an old man. So I don't go out. I go out to dinner and then I'm back in my room. But, you have some downtime when you're on the road. So I would find it very soothing and therapeutic to sit at a desk in a hotel and record exhaustive studies. It was good for my mind. It kept me busy. But lately, over the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months with the Rona, couple that with me building a massive home and being the general contractor myself, I just haven't had the time. So, again, I'm going to do this. It's just a matter of when. I'm going to start putting down my thoughts to this guy's points. Now, I will say that, again, if you're an IOer and you like crystal clear, concrete, and very concise information that makes sense of the Bible, Richard Carrier is not for you, okay? He's not for you. Richard Carrier is that guy who likes to use big words that other people don't understand to make himself look a little bit more intellectual than he actually is. When really, he probably just got picked up and dunked in a toilet and got a swirly every time he went to school as a child. That's probably who we're dealing with here. But he uses big words. He complicates the hell out of things that are oh so very simple. He's going to quote the Talmud and all these different things, and he's going to try to make it seem like he knows what he's talking about, right? But he doesn't. Okay? He's a bag full of hot air is what he is. He's got a lot of information, but he doesn't know what to do with any of it. And good for him. He's been able to sell some books about this stuff. But you can tell that he was certainly triggered in his article because he too probably was struck with the cognitive dissonance. And it's a bitch, man, I'll tell you. When you're hit with that, bear with me. When you're hit with the cognitive dissonance, it is not fun, all right? Especially when you've put so much time, effort, and energy into building your view and explaining your views and, being that atheist that everybody loves. It's not fun to come across something later on in life that just shuts all that down and that makes total sense of the story, like I.O. does. So Carrier probably read all this material, understood it very well, said, holy crap, these are really good points. Now let's ignore all of them and act like IOers are a bunch of cranks, which I think is what he called us. So we're going to deal with a lot of this. Just bear with me. Give me a little time. I know that Michael Bradley, Michael Barris, probably others are also going to be dealing with it. Guys, I encourage you, if you have the time, if you have the ability to sit down and start addressing some of these issues, go for it. Okay? We're all gonna take a look at it. And I can assure you that at the end of the day, these articles, this article that he wrote and these points that he made are going to really seem weak and watered down, right? And I haven't even read the whole thing. I've only read the first quarter, and I can already tell what type of article it's going to be. It's going to contain probably a lot of misquoted passages, a lot of, the other thing that's funny about these guys is, like Carrier, I caught in one of his paragraphs as I was skimming, he says something to the effect of, in other words, he's making a mockery out of the notion or the idea that these were actually descendants of Israel, or these were actually the lost sheep of the house of Israel that were being gathered in from the nations. He's making a mockery of it. And he's saying, that's impossible, it's impossible, right? I think he says that Paul might have thought that he was doing that, but that's physically and logically impossible, right? Well, for someone who claims to be so intelligent, right? How dumb can a person be? right? On the one hand, Carrier's an atheist. His whole argument is that none of this shit is possible, right? His whole argument is that people can't walk on water. People can't rise from the dead. People can't heal people of being blind. People can't split the Red Sea and walk through it. People can't ascend up into heaven like angels, right? That's his whole argument. It's impossible. That if he had a slogan for his work on the Bible and his theories and viewpoints on the Bible, the perfect slogan for that would be, it's impossible. Because that's what he believes. It's all a bunch of nonsense. Right? None of it's possible. But yet he has the cool yans, right, to actually make that argument against IO. That it's impossible for these ones to actually be Israelites. Can you believe it, folks? So Carrier gets to determine and dictate what's possible in a supernatural land of make-believe. Isn't that just convenient? Oh, but no, he doesn't. And we're going to rub his nose in that dog shit all day long. So Carrier, if you're out there, if you're scratching that wig, that toupee, or maybe it's real. Maybe you just had it permed. I don't know. Maybe you're Zach Galifianakis. If you are out there and you're listening, you got it coming, big dog. You got it coming. So, folks, stay tuned. I will, what I'll do is I'll post a link to the article in this, in the comments of this audio. That way we all have it. There's no secrets. Be prepared. It's a long article. Give it a read. Scratch your head a few times. Wonder what the hell this guy's even talking about. See how badly he butchers these texts. And we will be coming around the mountain to take a look at this sooner than later. I promise you that. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue on with my series, 100 Reasons Why the New Testament is Only About Israel. I believe we are on either number 5 or number 6, but that'll be coming out in the next day or two, the next article or the next audio in that series. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Otherwise, folks, I hope you all have a great day. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, a Ruski, and who knows, maybe we'll even catch that perm-haired idiot here in the comments. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.